Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm Alicia from Alicia Be Creative, and in today's tutorial we're going to take just a little bit of a step back from fall cups, although fall is totally the vibe right now, and we are going to be working on a split vinyl cup. So you guys have seen me work with vinyl before on my channel. I've done some full vinyl wraps and incorporated vinyl in a lot of different ways, but today we're going to be using two vinyls from the Flynn Sister Boutique line over at Auntie Tay's Vinyl. I absolutely love their vinyl, and of course, as soon as Jessica Flynn had announced this line, I had to snag every single piece of vinyl because it is absolutely gorgeous. So we're taking two of those vinyls and applying them to a cup, and then of course we're going to add glitter, but instead of doing the traditional epoxy method glitter, we're going to add glitter in a little bit of a more unique way to give this cup some extra pizzazz. And then of course, you know, I'm extra, so I have to add a cute little topper to go on top. So of course, everything that I talk about and use in today's tutorial will be listed and linked in the description box below. Feel free to check that out. That also has links to all of my social media as well as my Facebook group, Alicia Be Creative Community. So come on over and join us there as well. So last, of course, if you love today's tutorial, give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot, and I love that you guys are coming back each and every week to watch my tutorials. So I definitely have done way too much talking for this intro. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. What I have here is a 24-ounce plump from the Steel Magnolia. And what I'm trying to accomplish with this vinyl is, instead of just splitting the cup directly in half as I normally would for any other cup when I'm incorporating more than one vinyl, I wanted to have a more slanted look. So I'm going to be applying the vinyl at an angle. So a little bit different from the other ways that I have applied vinyl. So I'm just using some blue painter's tape and applying it to the cup at kind of a diagonal or slant. This you'll have to play with a little bit. You'll see that I do take my time here with this piece just because I want to try and make sure that my pieces of tape and my slants are even apart and that the two vinyl sections are the same size approximately. So I'm not doing any measuring here. I could have, but you guys know me. I am a more of a look at and go with the flow kind of person over measuring. So once I get the tape on there, now I'm just going to get my vinyl ready. So these two vinyls are from the Flynn Sisters Boutique line, purchased from Auntie Tay's. So we have Head in the Clouds, which is the one that I am trimming up right now, and then the other vinyl is Enough Chit Chat. So for cutting my vinyl, obviously my paper cutter is not going to cut in a slant. So instead of attempting to cut that slant, I'm just going to cut a large enough rectangle to fit over that slanted area section. I will say that applying the vinyl to the cup in this slanted way is definitely a little bit more difficult than just applying it straight up and down, just because you do have a little bit more wrinkles and bubbles that you have to take the time to work through to get your vinyl to be placed flat on the cup. So now I'm just going to cut approximately the same size for my Enough Chit Chat vinyl, and then we're going to go to apply it to the cup. Okay, so this was definitely the tricky part, and it's tricky because it's slanted, yes, but I'm also attempting to apply my vinyl slanted. Now, in hindsight and looking back, I could have just applied the vinyl up and down just like I would normal vinyl normally, but because I wanted certain pieces of the vinyl to be present on the cup, I wanted to apply it slanted so I was getting as much of the design from the vinyl to be showing up on the cup. So that's definitely why it made it a little bit easier. Whereas if I just attempted to apply it straight up and down like I would traditional vinyl and then just cut around my tape sections, I probably would not have struggled as much with getting the bubbles and wrinkles out of the vinyl while applying. So you guys have seen me apply vinyl before, and this is no different. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that backing off and slowly roll the vinyl onto the cup. Now again, because this is at an angle, it is introducing a little bit of air and bubbles, so it does take me longer than it traditionally would to get this vinyl on the cup. But if you take your time and just really go with your vinyl and not rush it, you definitely won't struggle. So just take your time. If you need to pull back on the vinyl, you certainly can. Just use that backing to pull the anchored vinyl back up to release any air or bubbles or wrinkles that may be happening on your vinyl as you attempt to roll it onto the cup. So I've told you guys this before. I absolutely love using my cup cradle as like my holding station for applying vinyl, because then I don't have to worry about trying to chase my cup all over the table as it rolls around. It just keeps it right in place, and then all I have to do is turn and rotate the cup and not have to worry about it rolling too far away from me and me not having complete control over the vinyl on the cup. So I'm just going to smooth out that section of vinyl. I do have quite a few bubbles, but I do know that the design I'm going to be adding to the cup will definitely eliminate those vinyls. Plus, you're going to see me go in with my X-Acto knife and pop any of those bubbles. When you're doing the popping of the bubbles in your vinyl with your X-Acto knife, make sure you have a new blade and not a dull blade, because you will see the holes if you have a dull blade versus a brand new blade. So just another tip to remember if you are using your X-Acto knife to get out any of the air bubbles in your vinyl. So now I'm going to pull the top down first and stretch that vinyl nice and straight over the top rim of the cup, and then I'll do the same for the bottom. The top rim we're just going to cut with an X-Acto knife, and then for the bottom rim, of course, we're going to use that super cool cup edging tool that I got from Amazon, which I will link in the description, to cut off the bottom pieces. So I did overlap a little bit onto my blue tape, so I am just going to cut right along that line there and get rid of any of that excess vinyl that may have gone over the blue tape, because again, I want to make sure that my two sections are as even as possible so that one section doesn't look larger than the other. So I'm just going to repeat the same thing on the other side before we trim off the end of the vinyl. Now that the overlap has been cut off, we're going to focus on the top and bottom rim. So I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and cut off the edge of the vinyl that's at the rim. I am paying close attention to just make sure that I, number one, am not cutting the vinyl that's onto the cup, and that I have my X-Acto knife pointed down inward towards the cup so that I don't cut the vinyl on the outside of the cup. So now we're going to focus on the bottom rim, and again, using this super cool cup edging tool, it is literally going to cut a perfect line around the bottom of my vinyl, and then I'm literally just going to peel it off like a sticker. It is so satisfying to be able to do that. I know, it's the little things, right? So I'm going to peel that off. I'll move the cup edging tool away, and we'll get back to moving on to the other side and applying the second side of vinyl. So I'm going to remove my blue tape, and I'm going to reuse the same blue tape to apply directly on top of the vinyl. So I'm just going to smooth out that blue vinyl, following the edge of the vinyl to make sure that it is onto the vinyl and not on the stainless steel. So this is just going to be my guide, so that when I put my second piece of vinyl onto the cup, when I'm cutting any of the excess vinyl, that I'm not cutting into the vinyl that's already placed. So that's very important, because obviously I don't want to damage or scratch up or put holes in the vinyl that's there. And this actually makes it a little bit easier to see under the vinyl as opposed to just that vinyl underneath. So now I'm just going to apply that second piece again, trying to do the exact same thing that I did before. In this part, I did realize that I cut my vinyl too short. Apparently my not measuring wasn't very good. So I'm just trying to line it up as close to the middle as possible, because I do know where the two seams meet, there will be some gold foil flakes, so I don't really have to worry about any stainless steel, because we're going to cover that up later anyway. So now I'm going to do the exact same thing and apply the vinyl to this half of the cup. So I'm going to speed this section up because you guys have already seen me do it on the other side. But obviously, if you have any questions or comments or things that you'd like to share or ask me, please feel free to leave those in the comments. I will be sure to answer them for you and hopefully give you some tips and tricks and things that you can use when you're applying your vinyl at home. After I applied my vinyl, I did just remove the blue tape, and now we're going to work on the seams first. So I'm just taking a traditional glue stick that I literally took out of my kids' old school supplies, And what I'm going to be doing is just applying that glue stick glue to the very seams of my vinyl. You'll see where some of my vinyl didn't match up, but we're going to cover that up with these gold foil flakes. And so I'm just taking those gold foil flakes, as you guys have seen me use in a couple tutorials already, and I'm just taking little chunks and patting it and rubbing it onto that seam and glued area. So there's no real technique here. You're literally just sticking it on and making sure that it's sticking in all of the glued and sticky spaces and covering up any of that stainless steel that may be showing. I did just try to focus and make sure that the width of the seam, if you will, or the width of the gold flakes was even throughout the entire seam, because obviously I want to make it look uniform on both sides of the cup. But really that was kind of it. There wasn't really any other thing that I needed to do, and that's kind of the fun of using these gold foil flakes. I mean, it's something that I've just kind of had in my craft supply bin and just haven't really been able to utilize them. So this has kind of been a fun way that I've been able to incorporate them into different cups that I've been working on. So I'm just going to keep applying that onto the cup, again focusing just to make sure that I'm covering all the stainless steel. I am still going to leave that bottom open as far as the very bottom of the cup. We'll go in and spray paint that later, but I'm not really worried about that right now, because really what I want to do is to establish the design on the cup. Now that all the gold flakes have been applied, I'm just going to take a dry brush that I have that I kind of use to brush off glitter, and I'm just going to aggressively brush off the seam in the gold flakes. So I want it to look textured, but I don't want the pieces to stick up or there to be too much there. So I'm just going to rub off all the extra gold flakes so that it is flat, because otherwise it will be a pain in the butt when I go to epoxy if I don't do this step. So just something to remember. You want to make sure that the gold foil flakes are flat and pressed down. You also could use something like quick coat or polyacrylic to apply over top, which you guys are going to see me do here in a little bit after I work on the design work. But I'm just going to obviously rub off any of the extra, because I don't want anything pokey or sharp sticking up when I go to do my coats of epoxy. Now on for the design work. So when I originally had the idea to use these two vinyls and apply to the cup, I didn't really know how I was going to design the cup. I had only had the slant vinyl with the gold leaf in mind. I didn't really know how else I was going to style the cup to really bring out the different kind of design that is already present on the vinyl. So I thought, why not add some glitter? So what I have is I just put a little bit of Mod Podge in a cup and a very thin paintbrush, and on that one side of vinyl there are gold lines, and so I'm using Pop That Bubbly from Glitter Makes It. I have a discount code in the description box, and I've just applied a thin coat of Mod Podge to that gold line there, and I've just followed that up with this champagne gold glitter. And so it really kind of enunciates the design of the vinyl, and of course gives it some sparkle. So I mean, of course, I'm totally in for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that with this bottom section, and then you're going to see me do the exact same thing with the top. So at this point, these gold lines are not present on the top portion of the cup, but I kind of just decide that I want to add some kind of veining and some kind of fun, lines that kind of match the ones towards the bottom. And again, I really had no design in mind when I first started this, so I just kind of went with the flow, kind of went with where my creative juices were taking me. And sometimes that's just the fun in creating cups and creating something. It's just, you just have to go with the flow, and it may not be what you thought it would be, but sometimes it comes out to be even more beautiful than you could have imagined. So I'm going to finish up applying this champagne gold glitter to this side, and then we're going to flip over to the purple side, and we're going to be doing something similar to that side of the cup as well. Oh, I also forgot to mention, because this is vinyl, the glitter does tend to stick, so I am using that same dry brush that I used for the gold foil on the seams to just pull off and brush off any of the extra glitter that may be on the vinyl. It's not something that you can blow off necessarily, which is usually my technique. If there's a little bit of glitter in a place I don't need it to be, you really do need to use kind of a soft brush to brush off that extra glitter so that it doesn't stay in those places that you don't want it to be. So just like I did with the other side, I'm going to do the same thing on the purple side. So I'm just applying a little bit of a Mod Podge to that brush and just following some of the different lines on the cup. So on this side of the cup, I'm using Barney, which is that purple color that I just applied. I'm also going to go in with a lighter color that you'll see, and that's Lavender Secret. Lavender Secret is from Glitter Makes It. Barney is from Peachy Olive Glitters. And so I'm just attempting to follow some of the very faint lines on this side of the cup to, again, create something that's unique and different. I didn't want it to look exactly like the other side. I wanted it to be a little bit different from that side, but still unique all on its own, but something that obviously complements the other side as well. So I'm just going to kind of play with the different lines on the cup and then apply my glitter to that side. Again, using that dry brush in between just to get off all the extra glitter that's on the vinyl so that it doesn't stick there permanently. So now I'm going to go in and apply a little bit more Mod Podge and kind of follow some of the darker purple lines with a lighter purple. So the lighter purple I'm using is Lavender Secret. So that's the Glitter Makes It glitter, and that glitter is a kind of, it's a lavender color, but it's almost along the lines of pink. Now, I wish that I would have added maybe just a little bit of like an opal color to it, and I think it would have brightened it up a little bit, because you can't always capture this color on this vinyl in pictures, but when you're looking at the cup dead on and in person, you definitely can see it. So I think maybe some opal glitter mixed in with it would have brightened it up a little bit and made it a little bit more shimmery to kind of be able to be picked up on a camera lens, if you will. But so I'm just going to do the exact same thing, and again, there's no like rhyme or reason. Like, I'm literally just following the lines on the cup, and as I'm going, I'm just going with the flow of the cup to just kind of establish some form of intricate, interesting design on that side. So just to finish things up and to kind of tie in both sides to each other, I'm going to go back in with my Mod Podge, and there's some like gold specks on this side of the vinyl, and so I'm going to use those specks to paint over and apply the champagne gold color, Pop That Bubbly, on the side. And I just felt like that was something that was needed and necessary in order to tie in the other side of the vinyl, to make it look like they were meant to be together and it wasn't like, you know, looking at two different cups at the same time, if you will. So I'm just going to brush off the excess, and then we're all done with this side. I think this is definitely a fun thing that you can do with any vinyl that you have. I have a lot of vinyls that are on their own kind of very, I don't want to say plain, but very kind of subtle in the design work. And so I think that adding glitter to enunciate the design definitely helps bring out the gorgeousness of the design overall. So kind of just a fun technique you guys may want to try with your vinyl that you have. After I let my Mod Podge dry for about an hour or so, I'm just going to go in with Quick Coat, and this is from CCDIY. This is their kind of glitter sealer that I like to use, and I'm going to apply that to not only the gold foil seams, but also all of the lines of glitter. So I'm just taking my time and applying a very, very thin coat of this polyurethane sealer to my glitter and to my gold leaf flakes on the seams. You'll see I'm doing it section at a time because, again, I don't want to drag any glitter or drag any of the foil flakes into sections that I don't want them to be. So I am going to take my time and just make sure that I am getting a thin enough layer, but also thick enough to cover each and every space that I need to be covered, and then going in and doing the same for the different glitter sections. So while that is going on the turner, I've already let that quick coat sit for about an hour, and then I'm going to go on to applying 2 coats of epoxy. I'm going to work on the topper. So I'm mixing up some Amazing Quick Coat from Alumilite, and I'm going to work on the topper. So I have 2 car coaster molds that I purchased from Amazon, which I will link in the description, and we're going to stir up this epoxy. So I haven't showed you guys stirring epoxy before, and I usually use metal coffee stir sticks. So a super cool hack that I just learned is that instead of using the flat edge of the metal stir stick, flip it around and use the round end, and you will have an almost bubble-free every single time finish to your epoxy. So just something that I thought I'd share that I saw, and I had to try it for myself because I didn't believe it. So sharing that with all of you. So I'm just going to mix up my epoxy here, and then I'm going to be adding it to these 2 car coaster molds. So we're going to add a little bit of a couple of things to these molds before we get it poured. So with the Amazing Quick Coat, you don't have to stir for very long, usually about 3 to 5 minutes, and obviously I'm not going to make you guys sit through this. So we'll speed through this part and then get to adding all of this good fun stuff to the coasters. Alright, so now that my epoxy is all stirred up, I'm going to just clean off my coffee stir stick real quick, and then we're going to be adding Diamond Magic. So Diamond Magic is an ultra fine glitter that I got from my Asia Creations. I will link that down in the description box below. It's like an epoxy additive, I definitely would say. So I would say it's basically a mica, if you will, because it's a super fine glitter. So I'm going to add that to my epoxy, a pretty generous scoop of that, and then of course we're going to go back in and add the gold foil flakes to kind of make this topper match and look good just like the cup does. So I'm going to take my time mixing in all of that. So I didn't need both car coaster molds because obviously I'm only making one topper, but I have a knack for like messing things up. So I try and always do a duplicate at the same time just in case I do screw up, which guess what, guys? I screwed up. So I'm just going to pour the epoxy with the additives into the car coaster molds, and I did have to mix up even more epoxy because I didn't have enough for the second mold, and I knew that I would need that in case I screwed up because I ended up screwing up, but that's kind of just how it goes, right? So I'm just going to finish that up, mix another set of epoxy in to add to this mold so that it is over the top, and then I will show you how I finish up my car coasters. So once the epoxy is all set in the molds, I let them sit for a little bit, and then I'm going to take my torch and just very carefully torch the top so that it's bubble free. Okay, so I pulled my cup off the turner, and of course we're going to do the dreaded sanding. For this cup, because it's just vinyl and very little glitter, there isn't a whole lot of sanding to do, just the top and bottom rim, again making sure to expose a little bit of stainless steel. I am going to sand the sides just because it's been sitting for more than a day, and then clean it off with rubbing alcohol and some paper towels. So now we're going to tape off the bottom because we are going to address the fact that it is stainless steel, and we are going to tape off that bottom edge, apply some plastic wrap so that we can protect the rest of the cup from spray paint, and then take this to spray paint the bottom gold. Okay, so now we're going to work on the topper. So I've already demolded my car coaster. I had screwed up on the other one, so I just put that one aside and took the one that was still good. And so I've already taken the lid to the 24-ounce plump and taken off the little topper pieces. So what I did was you just pull the silicone straw piece out and then slide the slider all the way back, and that piece comes off without any issue. So now I'm just trying to decide how many magnets I'm going to need. So I've done 2 magnets high right now and just marked on the other side of my coaster where I'm going to attach the magnets onto the car coaster and onto the top. So now I'm just going to get set up with my UV lamp. So we're going to use UV resin to do this topper today. You could use regular epoxy, but that would take you a little bit longer. You also could use hot glue, but I kind of wanted to try out UV resin because, again, it's another thing I have that I don't use, and I have an entire box that I literally have used maybe one time. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of the UV resin to the bottom of that magnet and very carefully hold that and then place it under the UV lamp. You only need probably 1 or 2 clicks or so to get the resin to harden. I will link also all of these supplies that I have for the UV resin in the description box, so feel free to check those out there. So I am speeding up and cutting out some of the waiting time because it is a long time to wait for both. So now I'm just going to do the exact same thing on the other side, applying a little bit of the UV resin to the bottom of that magnet there and holding that in place and then placing it under the UV lamp until it is completely hardened. So as soon as I have gotten that done, I'm just going to leave that under the lamp for a couple more times because I want to really make sure that those lamps are stuck there, or those magnets are stuck there, and that they're not going to move. So now I'm just going to grab the crushed ice. I guess it's really called a vase filler, but I've always used it for my ice toppers. So I put just a little bit of these into a cup that I have, and we are going to use these as kind of like gems to place on top of this car coaster to create our topper. So I'm going to take some alcohol ink. This is Purple Twilight from Ranger Alcohol Inks, and I'm going to just put a few drops in here, really just trying to get a decent coating on these kind of clear vase fillers, and just kind of set that aside to let all the alcohol ink soak into those. Okay, so while those are kind of drying and soaking up the ink, I'm going to grab a couple other things. So these are some cake toppers that I had bought a long while ago. I had tried to buy the large ones that like go over the top and didn't look at the sizing, and these ones were too small. So they've just been kind of sitting around, and I thought, why not add them to this topper? I'm also going to grab these other like gems. They're like diamond shaped, if you will. I got them from Michael's. I will link them in the description box as well, and we're going to use them to kind of look like the diamonds on top of this topper. So now that I feel like my vase filler is nice and soaked in with all the alcohol inks, I'm just going to dump them onto a paper towel to get rid of any of the extra ink, because obviously I don't want them to be wet, because then they won't stick to the resin or onto the coaster. So I'm just going to use a paper towel and just kind of blot those off and just make sure that they're not wet anymore. I will eventually be going over the entire topper with just a little bit of some fast set epoxy, but that is something that I didn't film because this video was already very long and I needed to cut it down. So I'm just going to blot those off, and then we're going to start to build our topper. So we're going to use these purple vase fillers, and we are going to kind of make them the base. So I'm just taking a little bit of the UV resin, applying kind of a thin layer but thick enough to stick things, and then setting the little purple vase fillers on top of that section. And I'm going to do this in small sections and then place the car coaster under the UV lamp so that it will harden, and then I can move on to the next section. So I'm doing this in small sections because I want to make sure that the resin cures and isn't still wet and movable, because then obviously things will start to fall apart. So definitely work in small sections. I think it just kind of works a little bit better that way. So I'm just going to move into small sections, and now that I kind of have a good base, I'm going to move into applying the little crown topper that I have. So I'm just going to put a little bit of UV resin on the very bottom of that crown, and I'm going to apply that directly on top of the kind of crystals. So I have it kind of angled so it's kind of sideways, if you will. I didn't want to put it flat because I know I'm going to go in and use epoxy, and I'm not going to use epoxy on the crown. I'm only going to use it on top of those purple gems because I want to make sure that the alcohol ink when washing this topper doesn't come off. I'm not going to choose to put it on top of the actual crown because I don't want it to dull the sparkle of the gems inside of the crown. So now I'm just using some of those diamond shaped pieces and just trying to fill up that crown so it kind of looks like the crown has the gems almost pouring out of them. So again, this is a process. You can do anything that you want with these toppers. That's probably what I love about these toppers and why I'm always excited when someone asks me to create one, because it's just a lot of fun thinking outside the box, going into my bin of supplies and coming up with something fun and unique and different. And I just feel like it's a super cute thing to also have on top of your cup that you can definitely say nobody else has. Now that the crown's applied, I am just going to speed through this. It is just going back and forth with the little diamond shapes as well as the purple crystals and just applying them where I feel like they're going to look nice, and using my UV resin in small sections to apply the different gems and crystals to the topper. Again, nothing too crazy. UV resin, I feel like, is just super easy to use. It definitely is great for toppers. Not something that I think I've mentioned. I don't like to use them on top of like coasters and stuff, only because I feel like it leaves a tacky feeling. So going over this with epoxy, I'm I'm going to do that because I know that it'll be kind of a harder exterior. But another thing that you can do is that if it's a sunny day, you can definitely leave something like this out in the sun and it will cure almost instantaneously out there, as opposed to using a UV light, or if you want to make sure it's a tacky free finish. So now that the complete topper is done, I'm now just going to work on adhering it to the top of my cup. Now that I'm happy with the topper and everything is nice and cured, I'm just going to use the top portion of the magnets to stick the coaster to the lid. So I got these magnets from the dollar store. I had some on the way from Amazon, but they weren't here in time. They're kind of the taller magnets. So with these magnets from the dollar store, I did have to stack them 3 high in order to get them to stick to the cup successfully, so that the coaster laid on top and still would adhere to the magnets below it. So that's just something to keep in mind, to maybe look into getting taller magnets when you're working with a cup lid like a 24-ounce plump. So I'm just going to stick both magnets to the bottom of the coaster, and then that is literally it. I will go in with a very thin coat of epoxy using a silicone brush onto those gems and purple stones, but really that is it. I'm sorry I didn't include that part in the video. I just felt like this video was way too long and I didn't want to make it any longer than it already is, but I do hope that you guys enjoyed today's tutorial. So I feel like that's kind of it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the final cup. So the cup itself took 2 final coats of epoxy after we painted the bottom, and then after we did the topper, we were completely finished. I love how this cup turned out. It really is a unique way to incorporate a topper, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it too. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, give this video a huge thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you guys again next week. Bye!